a lot of times like the behaviors that they have, people will think that they're just like behaving badly. Like they might like run into their friends or like hit their friends when they're like doing things. Like, have you ever like told a story with your hands and like accidentally like hit somebody? It's because like your spatial awareness, you didn't realize how close you were to them.
Welcome to the Helping Kids Be Kids podcast. I'm Ann Chinworth, the outreach manager here at Little Lighthouse, and we're here with Hannah Jimenez, our director of education. And so we are doing a series on the senses, and right now we're going to talk about a sense that you might not have heard of. I don't think I heard about this before I came to Little Lighthouse either, but it's called the vestibular sense. So if that's new to you, you are not alone. Hannah, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what the vestibular sense is to get us started?
Yeah. So the vestibular sense it has to do with your inner ear and like the fluid and all those little hairs and everything in your ear. And it's what gives us balance and what helps us have like spatial awareness. So like I kind of like know where things exist. So like someone who has like a poor vestibular system is probably gonna like run into things like, I don't know, sometimes I like run into like the counter with my hip. It's because my spatial awareness is off and I'm like not aiming like correctly, and so I like, instead of walking like through my kitchen, I like run right into the counter.
Great. Definitely done that more than usual, probably.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't admit how often I do that.
Exactly. Okay, so that's helpful. What does that look like for those who we're talking about, the senses and sensory seeking or sensory avoidance. You're going to talk a little bit about that too. But what does that mean, particularly with vestibular system?
Yeah, so we have different thresholds for all of our senses. So that's just the point at which we experience sensation. And so with the vestibular system, if you have a low threshold for that, it means that you are regulated. Like it's very easy for you to feel regulated. Like you only need a little bit of vestibular input to feel like balanced and have good spatial awareness. So if you have that low threshold, you're probably going to avoid like a lot of intense vestibular experiences. So like kids who avoid it don't like spinning. They probably don't like swinging very high or at like a fast pace. They're not going to love like ride-on toys and like roller coaster type things. But on the other side of that, when you have a really high threshold for vestibular input, that means it takes a lot more vestibular input for you to feel regulated. And so those types of people are the ones who are those vestibular seekers. So kind of like thrill seekers. So it's our kids who love like our little ride-on roller coaster toy. Like they love those toys. Adults like love real roller coasters. I love a roller coaster. And they're gonna love to like spin around and swing really fast. We have like our swings in all of our classrooms and like in our gym, and the kids who have a really high threshold for like that vestibular sense, they love to spin as fast as they can. And I've even had kids who like spin and spin and spin on it and stand right up and walk in a straight line because they like don't even get dizzy because their threshold is so high.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I have a high threshold, but I don't think I could spin and spin and spin and not get dizzy.
And not be dizzy.
I definitely get dizzy pretty easy, but so what does that look like behavior wise? Like, does that sometimes, I feel like that could maybe be, it sounds like they need to move a lot, and like maybe that would maybe seem like bad behavior.
Yeah, so kids who have a really high vestibular threshold, a lot of times like the behaviors that they have, people will think that they're just like behaving badly. Like they might like run into their friends or like hit their friends when they're like doing things. Like have you ever like told a story with your hands and like accidentally like hit somebody? It's because like your spatial awareness, you didn't realize how close you were to them. So those kinds of kids are gonna like just like really like maybe run into people and stuff. And so it's like a lot of times when you do things like that, you try to like make a joke about it. And so they'll like maybe run into their friend and like not, have done it on purpose, but be like, oh, haha, and like make it a joke because they don't want to be embarrassed about like, oh, I ran into this thing or I did this thing. And so sometimes that looks like them being like a little bit of a class clown, and they can get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Especially in a more like traditional school setting, like kind of an old school, like sitting in desks. And a lot of times they do need to be like moving more, like swinging their legs, or kind of like they'll rock back and forth. And so we'll do things like have wiggle cushions in their seats for them to kind of like rock back and forth on, or like tie the band around their chair for them to kind of like bounce their feet and move on. Just to like help them get some like different input.
Are there strategies like for home too that I'm trying to think of? I feel like you're really good at thinking of examples, but what are some examples like that might happen at home?
Yeah, so at home, it's really great to have like a swing set outside because they can swing and get all that input, or anything they can like hang on and swing. So you can get those like bars that you can put like in your door frame and like hang on those and swing. That's really good vestibular input. Any kind of like spinning. So like even like spinning in an office chair, or like those little like sit and spins where they like sit on it and spin the little toys. You can get them at like Walmart and Amazon, I'm sure, all different places. All of that is really good vestibular input that's going to help their body feel regulated. And some kids need a really high amount of vestibular input to feel regulated. So
I think I'm again one of those people. Like maybe I just have super high thresholds of all these things. But I remember just being little, and my dad always like spinning me around, or like he'd always play this game of like standing on his shoulders and like swinging us between his legs. Wild times.
That's a lot of vestibular input.
So I'm like, maybe I have that high threshold too.
Kind of a thrill seeker.
It's fun. So how can like teachers, how else can they meet those needs in the classroom?
So one thing that I did when I was still a classroom teacher is that we had like a gross motor room, and in that room we had a lot of different like sensory tools and just like big stuff that they could do. So we always had a swing in there, and we had a couple of different like sit and spin type options. Like one was one that you sit on and you use your hands to spin, and then another we actually had, it's like a giant top that you get inside and you use your body, like your core, to like actually spin in it.
That sounds amazing.
It's so much fun. Once the kids like got the hang of it, it was one of their favorite things.
So fun.
But incorporating those activities into your like day-to-day routine. So we actually started our day in our motor room. So before we did anything else, we went straight to the motor room. Everybody did like a full rotation of all the activities. And it was really interesting because days when we had like an assembly or something and we like didn't get to go that morning, the whole class would be off. Like you could tell a difference in their just behavior, their ability to focus, or like if we went that day, but maybe a student came in late and missed it, we could always tell that student didn't go. And so we would always try to like incorporate, some time where maybe like one of my classroom paras would take them down on their own to go and get that like input that they needed, because it's hard to focus when your like sensory system and your nervous system is off. You can't focus in school. And so just building those activities into your daily routine can help a lot.
What are some gross motor activities that maybe don't require like that equipment? Or I know here we have like one of our classrooms I think has like a hopscotch game like on their floor. Is that considered vestibular? Or
jumping. Jumping would. So when you like jump up and come back down, it's giving you that vestibular input. So like a trampoline works also. So like I mentioned before, like an office chair, like a lot of like, schools or even at home, you might have an office chair that spins, just sitting them in that and spinning them. And then or any kind of like rotary swing. So if you can get a swing like attachment for your swing at home, or even like one that like hangs on a tree to where it'll like spin in a circle. That'll give really good vestibular input. And just swinging back and forth also gives input, and that's a very like calming motion. So that can really help like kids calm down to just that like slow back and forth motion of the swing.
Great. Sounds great. So who are the professional experts on vestibular sense?
Well, so if you've been listening to any of our other podcasts about the senses, you probably know what I'm going to say. It's that our OTs, our occupational therapists, are going to be the professionals who know the most about vestibular needs. I think especially about the vestibular sense, they're going to know a lot because it is one that's just not as like talked about and as well known, whereas they've like studied it pretty like intensely.
Yeah.
So they're going to have a lot of knowledge and be able to give you like helpful tools that can help your child either at school or at home. And I think like also working together with your child's teacher and like figuring out like what works well for them at school and asking those questions about, you know, are you meeting their vestibular needs and like how are you meeting them? And you guys can kind of work together. And sometimes like if you don't have a swing at home, you might not know that they're really thriving when they get to have that motion. So you know, asking their teacher, you know, what are some of the things you do at school and figuring out what, you know, is going to help at home.
That's good.
Can be really useful.
That communication so that you can carry those things over to school and home and vice versa. That's really good. Well, great. I feel like that was a great introduction. Do you have anything else you want to add? Anything we missed? Well, great. Thanks for tuning into this episode. I hope you guys are enjoying this series on our senses and keep listening for more information about the senses. So have a good day.